The grand ballroom of Valdoria Palace gleamed under the light of 1,000 candles. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the marble floors as nobles from across the kingdom gathered for the annual harvest celebration. Princess Isabella stood near the towering windows, her emerald gown catching the light as she watched the festivities with careful eyes. She had married into this royal family 3 years ago, bringing with her the hope of unity between two powerful kingdoms. Her marriage to Prince Edmund had been arranged, but love had grown between them like a delicate flower in spring. Now, as she watched her husband laugh with the courtiers, she felt a familiar warmth in her chest. Queen Alexandra observed from her throne, her silver hair crowned with the ancient tiara of Valdoria. Her pale blue eyes, sharp as winter frost, followed every movement in the room. She had ruled alongside her husband for 30 years, and now, in her widowhood, she held the kingdom's power in her elegant hands. The queen's fingers drummed silently against the armrest of her throne, a gesture that those who knew her recognized as a sign of deep contemplation. The tension between the two women had been building for months. It started with small things, a seating arrangement at dinner, a choice of ladies in waiting, the color of drapes in the princess's chambers. But beneath these trivial disputes lay a fundamental struggle for influence within the palace walls. Isabella approached the throne with measured steps, her ladies trailing behind her like colorful birds. She curtsied deeply, her training in court etiquette flawless. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice carrying just enough to be heard over the music. "The harvest celebration is magnificent. The kingdom prospers under your wise rule." Alexandra's lips curved into what might have been a smile, though it never reached her eyes. "Indeed, child. Valdoria has weathered many storms. It takes more than pretty words and prettier dresses to maintain a kingdom's strength." The words stung, as they were meant to. Isabella had spent considerable time selecting her gown, hoping to impress the foreign ambassadors in attendance. She straightened her spine, refusing to show how the queen's barb had found its mark. "Perhaps your Majesty would honor us with a dance," Isabella suggested, knowing full well that Alexandra had not danced since the king's death 2 years prior. "Dancing is for the young," Alexandra replied, her tone dismissive. "Those of us with true responsibilities must observe and guide." Lord Pemberton, the queen's most trusted advisor, materialized at Alexandra's elbow as if summoned by an invisible thread. His presence always made Isabella uncomfortable. The man had eyes like a hawk and loyalty to the queen that bordered on obsession. "Your Majesty," Pemberton murmured, though his eyes remained fixed on Isabella. "The Duke of Ravenmore has arrived. He wishes to pay his respects." Alexandra nodded, effectively dismissing Isabella without words. The princess curtsied again and retreated, her cheeks burning with the familiar heat of humiliation. As she walked away, she heard Alexandra's cold laughter ring out at something Pemberton had whispered. Prince Edmund found his wife near the garden doors, her face carefully composed but her hands trembling slightly. He knew that look, the one she wore after another encounter with his mother. He took her arm gently, leading her onto the moonlit terrace where they could speak without the 100 eyes of court upon them. "What did she say this time?" Edmund asked, though he could guess. His mother had grown increasingly critical of Isabella since the announcement of the princess's pregnancy 6 months ago. The prospect of a grandchild who might one day rule had awakened something protective and territorial in the queen. "Nothing of consequence," Isabella lied smoothly. She had learned early in her marriage that Edmund was caught between his love for her and his duty to his mother. She would not be the one to force him to choose sides. Edmund studied his wife's face in the silver moonlight. At 25, Isabella possessed a beauty that went beyond her delicate features and honey-colored hair. There was strength in her, a quiet determination that had first attracted him during their formal courtship. But lately, he had watched that strength being tested daily by his mother's increasingly hostile behavior. "Isabella," he began, but she pressed a finger to his lips. "Not tonight," she said softly. "Tonight, let us just enjoy the stars and the music. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." Inside the ballroom, Queen Alexandra held court like a spider at the center of her web. She spoke with ambassadors and nobles, her words carefully chosen to maintain the delicate balance of power that kept Valdoria strong. But her thoughts kept returning to the princess and the child she carried. Alexandra had given birth to 3 sons, of whom only Edmund survived to adulthood. The pain of losing her other children had carved deep grooves in her heart. spaces that she had filled with ambition and control. Now, watching Isabella bloom with pregnancy, she felt a complex mixture of emotions that she refused to examine too closely. "The princess looks radiant tonight," observed Lady Mortimer, one of Alexandra's oldest friends and few confidantes. "Radiance fades," Alexandra replied curtly. "What matters is whether she has the steel necessary to raise a future monarch." "The palace is no place for weakness," Lady Mortimer, who had known Alexandra since they were both young brides, heard the unspoken fears in her friend's words. The queen had built walls around herself after each loss, until even those closest to her struggled to glimpse the woman behind the crown. As the evening progressed, an incident occurred that would set in motion a chain of events no one could have foreseen. The Duke of Ravenmore, a powerful ally from the northern provinces, had brought his son to court. The young man, Lord Marcus, was everything a noble heir should be: handsome, accomplished, and charming. When he asked Princess Isabella to dance, she could hardly refuse without causing offense. They moved across the floor with practiced grace, Isabella maintaining the proper distance between them. But Queen Alexandra watched with narrowed eyes, noting how the young lord's gaze lingered on the princess, how he smiled a touch too warmly. When the dance ended, Alexandra made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. "Lord Pemberton," she said quietly, never taking her eyes off Isabella, "I believe it's time we reviewed the princess's household. Some changes may be necessary." The advisor bowed, understanding immediately. The queen's paranoia about threats to the succession had grown since Isabella's pregnancy was announced. Any perceived rival or complication would be dealt with swiftly. Over the following days, Isabella noticed subtle changes in the palace routine. Her favorite lady-in-waiting was suddenly reassigned to attend visiting nobility. The guard rotation outside her chambers changed without explanation. Even her personal correspondence began to arrive already opened, though no one admitted to reading it. She brought her concerns to Edmund, who confronted his mother in her private study. The room, with its dark wood paneling and portraits of past monarchs, seemed to amplify Alexandra's authority. "You're overstepping, mother," Edmund said without preamble. "Isabella is my wife and carries the heir to Valdoria. She deserves respect, not suspicion." Alexandra set down her quill slowly, each movement deliberate. When she looked up at her son, her expression was unreadable. "Everything I do is for the protection of this kingdom and our family line. Your wife is young and inexperienced. She doesn't understand the dangers that surround us." "What dangers?" Edmund demanded. "Lord Marcus asked her to dance. It was a courtesy, nothing more." "You see a dance?" Alexandra replied coolly. "I see a young nobleman from a powerful family showing interest in a beautiful princess. I see potential alliances shifting, loyalties being tested. I see what your father taught me to see, threats before they fully form." Edmund felt the familiar frustration of arguing with his mother. She had ruled too long to change her ways, and her paranoia had only grown since his father's death. "Isabella has given you no reason to doubt her loyalty. Loyalty is earned, not given," Alexandra countered. "And it must be constantly proven. Your wife has yet to understand this fundamental truth of royal life." That evening, Isabella dined alone in her chambers, Edmund having been called away on urgent business. She suspected his mother's hand in the sudden summons but said nothing. As she picked at her food, she felt the baby move within her, a reminder of what truly mattered. Her maid, Mary, a young woman from her homeland who had accompanied her to Valdoria, noticed her distress. "Your Highness seems troubled," Mary ventured carefully. Isabella smiled sadly. "Tell me, Mary, in the stories you heard as a child, did the princesses ever find happiness in their palaces?" Mary considered the question seriously. "Some did, Your Highness, but they usually had to fight for it. The best stories are about princesses who found their own strength." The words stayed with Isabella as she prepared for bed. Perhaps it was time she stopped trying to win Alexandra's approval and started building her own power base within the court. She had allies, nobles who appreciated her intelligence and grace, servants who were loyal to her kindness rather than fear. It would take time and careful planning, but she would not allow her child to grow up in a palace filled with suspicion and hostility. Queen Alexandra stood on her private balcony that night, looking out over the kingdom she had helped build. The weight of the crown seemed heavier lately, though she would never admit it to anyone. In the distance, she could see the tower where Isabella's chambers lay, windows glowing with warm light. Once, she had been like Isabella, young, hopeful, believing that love could conquer the harsh realities of royal life. But she had learned through pain and loss that power was the only true security. Every compromise, every moment of weakness, could lead to disaster. She had survived by becoming harder than her circumstances demanded. Lord Pemberton joined her on the balcony, maintaining a respectful distance. "Your Majesty's instructions have been carried out. The princess's household has been adjusted, and the Duke of Ravenmore has been encouraged to conclude his visit early. His son will be offered a position in our embassy to Moravia, far from court." Alexandra nodded, satisfied. "Good. We must be vigilant, Pemberton. The kingdom has too many enemies, both within and without." "Of course, Your Majesty. Though if I may observe, the princess seems genuinely devoted to Prince Edmund." Alexandra's expression hardened. "Devotion is a luxury we cannot afford to trust. My husband was devoted to me, and yet I lost 2 sons under his watch. No, Pemberton, we trust in strength and preparation, nothing else." As the advisor withdrew, Alexandra remained on the balcony, a solitary figure against the night sky. In her chambers, Isabella felt the baby kick again and placed a protective hand over her belly. Between them, the palace held its breath, waiting for the storm that was surely coming. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Isabella's brother, Prince Adrian of Rosemore, arrived with a small retinue, claiming he wished to visit his sister and celebrate the upcoming birth. His arrival sent ripples through the court, as relations between Valdoria and Rosemore had been carefully balanced since Isabella's marriage. Adrian was everything a prince should be. Tall, golden-haired, with an easy smile that charmed everyone he met. But Isabella knew her brother well enough to see the concern in his eyes when they embraced. "Sister," he said warmly, though his gaze swept the room, noting the positions of guards and servants. "You look beautiful. Motherhood suits you." "Adrian," Isabella replied, genuine joy lighting up her face. "I didn't expect you. Mother didn't mention you were coming." "It was a sudden decision," Adrian said carefully. "Father sends his love and mother her prayers for an easy birth. But I wanted to see for myself how you fare in your new kingdom." They spoke of trivial things while in the public eye, but Isabella knew her brother had come for more than a social visit. That evening, when they could speak privately in the palace gardens, Adrian's true purpose became clear. "We've heard troubling reports," he said without preamble. "Merchants and travelers speak of tension in the Valdorian court. They say Queen Alexandra grows more controlling by the day, that she trusts no one, not even you." Isabella tried to dismiss his concerns. "Court gossip travels faster than truth, brother. The queen is protective of her family and kingdom. It's understandable." Adrian caught her hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Isabella, Father is prepared to offer you sanctuary if needed. You could have your child in Rosemore, surrounded by family who loves you." The offer was tempting, more than Isabella wanted to admit, but she shook her head firmly. "My place is here, with my husband. I won't abandon Edmund or give Alexandra the satisfaction of driving me away." "Pride won't protect you or your child," Adrian warned. "Father fears what might happen if Queen Alexandra sees you as a threat to her power. Then I must ensure she sees me as an asset instead," Isabella replied, with more confidence than she felt. Adrian's arrival had not gone unnoticed by Queen Alexandra. She summoned Edmund to her study that afternoon, her displeasure evident in every line of her body. "The Prince of Rosemore arrives unannounced, and you said nothing?" she demanded. "I knew nothing of it," Edmund replied honestly. Isabella was as surprised as anyone. "Surprised?" Alexandra's voice dripped skepticism. "How convenient. A foreign prince appears just as tensions rise in court. One wonders what messages he brings from Rosemore." Edmund felt his temper flare. "Adrian comes to visit his pregnant sister. Must you see conspiracy in everything?" "I see what experience has taught me to see," Alexandra shot back. "Your father was too trusting, and it nearly cost us the kingdom more than once. I won't make the same mistakes." The argument that followed was heated, with voices raised loud enough that servants in the corridor hurried past, pretending not to hear. It ended with Edmund storming out, leaving Alexandra alone with her suspicions and plans. That night, a grand dinner was held to welcome Prince Adrian. The great hall was filled with the finest nobles of Valdoria, all eager to assess this foreign prince and divine the political implications of his visit. Isabella sat between her husband and brother, trying to project calm despite the undercurrents of tension. Queen Alexandra presided over the feast with icy dignity. She engaged Adrian in conversation, her questions polite but probing, seeking any hint of ulterior motives. Adrian, trained in diplomacy from birth, parried each verbal thrust with grace, but the strain was visible to those who looked closely. The evening took a dramatic turn when Lord Marquis of Ravenmore appeared unexpectedly. He had not departed for Moravia as instructed, instead returning to court with documents he claimed were urgent. His eyes found Isabella across the crowded hall, and something in his expression made her uneasy. He approached the high table with proper deference, bowing low to the Queen. "Your Majesty, I apologize for the intrusion, but I bring news that cannot wait. My father has uncovered a plot against the crown." The hall fell silent, all eyes turning to the young lord. Alexandra leaned forward, her interest sharp. "Speak, Lord Marquis." "What plot?" Marquis produced a sealed letter. "Conspirators in the eastern provinces plan to challenge the succession. They claim that any child born to a foreign princess cannot truly rule Valdoria. My father intercepted their correspondence and sent me to warn you immediately." The implications hit the room like a thunderbolt. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face as she realized what this meant. Any threat to her child's legitimacy was a threat to her position, her marriage, everything she had built in Valdoria. Adrian's hand moved subtly to his sword hilt, a gesture not lost on the guards around the room. Edmund rose from his chair, fury evident in every line of his body. "How dare they question my child's right? Isabella is my lawful wife, recognized by the church and crown." "Sit down, Edmund," Alexandra commanded, her voice cutting through his anger. She studied Lord Marquis with calculating eyes. "You've done well to bring this to our attention. Tell me, what do these conspirators propose instead?" Marquis hesitated, his gaze flickering to Isabella before returning to the Queen. "They speak of old bloodlines, Your Majesty, pure Valdorian nobility that they claim should inherit before any child of mixed heritage." The insult to Isabella was clear, and the room bristled with tension. Adrian started to rise, but Isabella's hand on his arm stopped him. She had learned enough of Valdorian politics to know that showing weakness now would be fatal. Instead, she stood gracefully, her pregnancy evident but her bearing regal. "Your Majesty," she addressed Alexandra directly, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "If there are those who doubt my child's right to inherit, let them come forward openly. I stand ready to defend my family's honor and my place in this kingdom." It was a bold move, one that surprised even Edmund. Alexandra studied her daughter-in-law with new interest. Perhaps there was more steel in the girl than she had credited. "Well spoken, Princess," Alexandra said slowly. "Lord Marquis, you will provide Pemberton with all information about these conspirators. We will root out this treason swiftly." She paused, her gaze sweeping the assembled nobles. "Let it be known that any who question the legitimacy of my grandchild questions me, and that is something I do not forgive." The declaration sent a ripple through the court. For the first time since Isabella's arrival, Alexandra had publicly supported her. But Isabella was too wise to take it as a sign of acceptance. The Queen protected the succession, not her personally. Still, it was a victory of sorts. As the feast continued with forced normalcy, Adrian leaned close to his sister. "That was bravely done. But this plot, it stinks of manipulation. Someone wanted this information revealed publicly. Tonight." Isabella nodded slightly. "The question is who benefits from creating doubt about my child's inheritance? Perhaps someone who wishes to seem like your protector," Adrian suggested, his eyes finding Lord Marquis across the room. The young lord was deep in conversation with Pemberton, but his attention kept returning to their table. Edmund, overhearing, frowned deeply. "You suspect Marquis?" But he brought warning of the plot. "Sometimes the messenger and the conspirator are one and the same," Adrian replied quietly. "In Rosemore, we have a saying, 'Beware the wolf who warns of wolves.'" The evening concluded with carefully orchestrated farewells and promises to investigate the conspiracy thoroughly. As the nobles dispersed, whispers followed in their wake. The court was divided, some rallying to Isabella's defense, others quietly questioning whether foreign influence had grown too strong in Valdoria. In her chambers that night, Queen Alexandra sat before her mirror, removing the heavy crown with practiced hands. Her reflection showed a woman still beautiful but marked by years of vigilance and loss. Pemberton waited nearby, ready to discuss the evening's revelations. "What do you make of Lord Marcus's timing?" she asked, knowing her advisor's keen mind had been analyzing every detail. "Suspicious, Your Majesty. The Duke of Ravenmore has never shown such initiative in intelligence gathering before. And for his son to return against your express wishes, he's playing a game," Alexandra concluded. "The question is whether he plays it alone or as part of a larger scheme." She turned from the mirror. "Double the guards around the princess. If there is a genuine threat, we cannot afford to lose the heir." "And if the threat comes from within the palace?" Pemberton asked delicately. Alexandra's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then we will handle it as we always have, swiftly and without mercy. But for now, we watch. The princess showed spirit tonight. Let's see if she has the wisdom to navigate what comes next." Meanwhile, Isabella sat with Edmund and Adrian in her private solar, the three of them speaking in hushed tones. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls adorned with tapestries from both Valdoria and Rosemore. "We need to uncover the truth about this conspiracy," Edmund said, pacing restlessly. "If there are traitors in the kingdom, they must be found." "Agreed," Adrian said, but carefully. "In my experience, when plots are revealed so dramatically, there's usually a deeper game at play. Someone wanted this information public, wanted to create doubt and division." Isabella absently rubbed her swollen belly, feeling the baby respond to her touch. What if the real purpose wasn't to challenge the succession but to force Queen Alexandra to publicly support me? She's been undermining my position for months. Now she's bound by her own words to defend my child's rights. Edmund stopped pacing, considering his wife's words. "You think someone orchestrated this to manipulate my mother?" "It's possible," Isabella said. "Your mother values the succession above all else. Threaten that, and she'll defend it fiercely, even if it means supporting me." Adrian nodded slowly. "It's clever, if true, but dangerous. Whoever did this has made enemies of both the conspirators and potentially the queen herself if she discovers the manipulation." They talked late into the night, making plans and considering possibilities. Adrian would use his diplomatic contacts to investigate the eastern provinces. Edmund would work with the palace guard to ensure security, and Isabella would do what she did best: watch, listen, and build her network of allies within the court. As the palace settled into uneasy sleep, a figure moved through the shadows of the garden. Lord Marcus of Ravenmore made his way to a secluded gazebo where another waited, cloaked and hooded against recognition. "It's done," Marcus reported. "The seed of doubt is planted, and the queen has publicly committed to defending the princess." "Excellent," the figure replied, voice disguised but carrying authority. "Continue to play your part. The game has only just begun." Marcus hesitated. "Let him suspect. Suspicion without proof is merely another form of division, and division serves our purposes well." As the mysterious figure departed, Marcus remained in the gazebo, wondering not for the first time if he had chosen the right side in this dangerous game. But ambition had its own logic, and he had come too far to turn back now. The next morning brought a flurry of activity as the palace prepared for a full investigation of the conspiracy. Isabella woke to find her chambers filled with flowers, a gesture from nobles eager to show their support after the previous night's drama. She smiled grimly, knowing how quickly such support could evaporate if the political winds changed. Mary helped her dress, choosing a gown of deep blue that emphasized her royal status while accommodating her pregnancy. "The servants are all talking, Your Highness," Mary reported quietly. "They say the Queen spent the night in the war room with her generals." "War room?" Isabella frowned. "For a domestic conspiracy? That's what seems strange to me too," Mary agreed. "Unless she believes the threat is greater than Lord Marcus suggested." Isabella filed this information away. Everything in the palace had layers of meaning, and Alexandra's overreaction might itself be significant. As she made her way to the morning room for breakfast, she encountered Lady Mortimer in the corridor. The older woman, one of Queen Alexandra's inner circle, rarely spoke to Isabella directly. But now she paused, studying the princess with shrewd eyes. "You handled yourself well last night," Lady Mortimer said unexpectedly. The Queen noticed. "I seek only to protect my child and serve Valdoria," Isabella replied carefully. Lady Mortimer's smile was knowing. Of course. A word of advice, Princess. In this palace, the greatest threats often come disguised as allies. Trust carefully. With that cryptic warning, she swept away, leaving Isabella to wonder whether she had just been threatened or aided. Such was the nature of palace intrigue. Nothing was ever entirely clear. The investigation into the conspiracy began with characteristic efficiency under Lord Pemberton's direction. Palace guards questioned servants, messengers were dispatched to the eastern provinces, and every noble who had attended the feast found themselves under subtle scrutiny. The atmosphere in the palace grew thick with suspicion, exactly the opposite of what Isabella had hoped for during her pregnancy. Prince Adrian extended his visit, ostensibly to support his sister but actually to conduct his own investigation. His methods differed from Pemberton's official inquiry, where the Queen's advisor used authority and intimidation. Adrian employed charm and gold. Information flowed to him from unexpected sources: traveling merchants, minor nobles nursing grievances, even kitchen servants who overheard more than their masters realized. 3 days after the dramatic revelation, Adrian brought disturbing news to Isabella. They met in the palace's oldest wing, where thick stone walls ensured privacy and ancient tapestries muffled their words. The conspiracy is real, he told her without preamble. But it's not what it seems. The letters Marcus brought were genuine, but they were written months ago. Someone held them back, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal them. Isabella felt a chill despite the warm morning sun streaming through tall windows. Then the conspirators could have already acted. My child could be in immediate danger. Or, Adrian said carefully, the danger has been neutralized, and someone used old intelligence to create current chaos. Sister, I believe you're caught in a game between multiple players, each with their own agenda. Before Isabella could respond, a commotion arose in the courtyard below. They rushed to the window to see palace guards surrounding a carriage bearing the colors of the eastern province of Blackmore. As they watched, soldiers roughly pulled several men from the carriage, including one Isabella recognized, Lord Garrett of Blackmore, one of the kingdom's most powerful nobles. They've arrested him, Isabella breathed. Based on those letters? Adrian's expression was grim. This moves too fast. In Rosemore, we would spend weeks verifying such intelligence before moving against a noble of Garrett's standing. Either your queen has additional evidence, or she's using this as an excuse to remove political opponents, Isabella finished. She knew Alexandra's reputation for ruthless efficiency when dealing with threats. They made their way to the throne room, where Queen Alexandra held emergency court. The vast hall was packed with nobles, all straining to see Lord Garrett brought before the Queen in chains. Isabella noticed how some nobles shifted nervously, wondering if they too might be accused. Alexandra sat rigid on her throne, the picture of royal authority. Beside her stood Edmund, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. He caught Isabella's eye as she entered, a silent message passing between them. Be careful, Lord Garrett of Blackmore. Alexandra's voice rang out clear and cold. You stand accused of high treason, of conspiring to challenge the lawful succession of this kingdom. What say you to these charges? Garrett, a man in his 50s with iron-gray hair and proud bearing despite his chains, raised his head defiantly. I say that loving Valdoria's pure bloodline is no treason. I say that foreign influence has grown too strong in this court, and I say that history will judge who the true traitors are. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Even chained and facing execution, Garrett dared to challenge the Queen. Isabella felt every eye in the room turned to her, the foreign princess whose presence had allegedly sparked this crisis. Silence, Alexandra commanded, and the room obeyed. Lord Garrett, your letters speak plainly of armed rebellion. You wrote of gathering forces, of the day when true Valdorians would reclaim their birthright. Do you deny these words? I deny nothing, Garrett replied. Every word was written in service to the kingdom my fathers helped build. A kingdom now sold piece by piece to foreign interests through marriage alliances. Edmund stepped forward, his hand on his sword. You dare insult my wife and unborn child in our own hall? You forget yourself, Lord Garrett. I forget nothing, Your Highness. Garrett shot back, including the promises your father made about keeping Valdorian nobility at the heart of succession. Promises broken for political expedience. Isabella felt Adrian tense beside her, ready to defend her honor. but she placed a restraining hand on his arm. This was her battle to fight. She stepped forward, her pregnancy making her movement deliberate but no less dignified. "Lord Garrett," she said, her voice carrying surprising strength. "You speak of bloodlines and birthright. Tell me, what makes Valdorian blood superior to any other? Is it the color? The temperature? Or is it simply fear of change that drives your hatred?" The direct challenge caused another stir. Queens and princesses typically remained silent during such proceedings, letting men handle matters of state. But Isabella had learned from watching Alexandra. Sometimes breaking protocol was its own form of power. Garrett's face flushed with anger. "You mock our traditions, princess. This is exactly why." "What I mock," Isabella interrupted, causing gasps at her boldness, "is the notion that the accident of birth determines worth. My child will be raised to love and serve Valdoria. They will know its history, speak its language, honor its customs. That matters more than which side of a border their mother was born on." Queen Alexandra watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. When Isabella finished, the queen rose from her throne, commanding instant attention. "Lord Garrett has confessed his treason before witnesses," she declared. "The penalty is death. However, in consideration of his family's long service to the crown, I offer exile instead. You have 3 days to leave Valdoria forever. Your lands and titles are forfeit to the crown." It was harsher than death in some ways, stripping Garrett of everything that defined him. As guards led him away, he turned back one final time. "This is not over," he said, his words clearly meant for more than just the queen. "Others believe as I do. The princess's child will never sit secure on the throne." After the dramatic trial, the court dispersed slowly, nobles clustering in small groups to discuss what they had witnessed. Isabella found herself surrounded by well-wishers, some genuine, others clearly calculating the political winds. She accepted their words graciously while her mind raced with implications. That evening, Queen Alexandra summoned Isabella to her private study. It was the first time the queen had requested her presence alone, without Edmund as intermediary. Isabella arrived to find Alexandra standing before a wall of portraits, previous queens of Valdoria, all watching with painted eyes. "Your performance today was unexpected," Alexandra began, without turning around. "Tell me, was that passionate defense rehearsed or genuine?" "Your Majesty knows I would do anything to protect my child," Isabella replied carefully. Alexandra finally turned, studying her daughter-in-law with those penetrating blue eyes. Garrett was a fool, but he wasn't entirely wrong. There are many who share his views, if not his methods. Your child will face challenges I cannot shield them from. Then we must prepare them to meet those challenges, Isabella said. Together, a bitter smile crossed Alexandra's face. Together? You still believe in such fairy tales? I have protected this kingdom for 30 years through strength, not sentiment. Your child will need to be harder than you can imagine. Or perhaps, Isabella ventured, they'll need to be wiser. Strong enough to fight when necessary, wise enough to build bridges when possible. Alexandra moved to her desk, pouring wine from a crystal decanter. She offered a glass to Isabella, who declined with a gesture to her pregnant belly. The queen nodded and sipped her own wine thoughtfully. You remind me of myself when I first came here, Alexandra said suddenly. I too believed I could change things through kindness and wisdom. Then I lost my first son to a fever that might have been poison. My second to a riding accident that might have been sabotage. After that, I learned that kindness is luxury queens cannot afford. Isabella felt unexpected sympathy for the older woman. I'm sorry for your losses, Your Majesty. I cannot imagine such pain. No, you cannot, Alexandra agreed. But you will. This crown demands sacrifices you haven't begun to understand. The question is whether you'll be strong enough to make them when the time comes. Before Isabella could respond, a knock interrupted. Lord Pemberton entered with a troubled expression, bowing quickly before speaking. Your Majesty, we've intercepted communications from Rosemore. Prince Adrian has been sending regular reports to his father about our internal affairs. Isabella's blood ran cold. That's not possible. Adrian would never what? Alexandra interrupted, her earlier moment of vulnerability vanishing behind cold fury. Spy on the kingdom his sister married into? Use her pregnancy as cover for intelligence gathering? Pemberton produced several letters, their seals broken. These were found in the prince's rooms, Your Majesty. They contained detailed observations about our defenses, our noble alliances, even private conversations from court. Isabella's mind reeled. She knew Adrian was investigating the conspiracy, but formal reports to their father? It looked damaging, even if the truth was innocent. There must be an explanation, she said desperately. Adrian came to support me. Nothing more. Then he won't mind explaining himself, Alexandra said. She turned to Pemberton. Have Prince Adrian brought here immediately, and summon my son. He should hear what his brother-in-law has been doing. The wait was agonizing. Isabella's thoughts churned with possibilities. Had Adrian betrayed her trust? Was this another manipulation like the conspiracy revelations? When her brother arrived under guard, his expression was calm but wary. Edmund entered moments later, his face dark with anger. He had obviously been briefed on the accusations. The small study felt crowded with tension as Alexandra laid out the evidence against Adrian. These letters detail private matters of state, she said coldly. Information that could damage Valdoria if used against us. Explain yourself, Prince of Rosemore. Adrian straightened his shoulders. I reported to my father as any dutiful son would. He was concerned for Isabella's welfare and wanted assurance she was safe. I told him nothing that could harm Valdoria. You reported on our military positions, Edmund accused, brandishing one letter. Our trade negotiations with the southern kingdoms. How is that ensuring my wife's safety? Because understanding Valdoria's stability helps assess threats to my sister, Adrian replied evenly. Would you prefer I told my father his daughter lived in a kingdom too weak to protect her? The argument escalated quickly, voices rising as accusations flew. Isabella watched in horror as the two men she loved most prepared to come to blows. But it was Queen Alexandra who ended it with a single raised hand. Enough, Prince Adrian. Your actions, whatever their intent, have violated our trust. You will leave Valdoria at first light tomorrow. Any attempt to communicate with Princess Isabella afterward will be considered an act of aggression between our kingdoms. You cannot exile me from seeing my sister, Adrian protested. I can and I will, Alexandra replied icily. Your sister chose to become Valdorian when she married my son. Her loyalties must lie here, not with Rosemore. You've made that choice difficult enough. Isabella found her voice at last. Please, Your Majesty. Adrian meant no harm. Banishing him will only create more tension between our kingdoms. Alexandra's gaze was pitiless. Then perhaps Rosemore should have considered that before sending a spy to our court. The decision is final. The meeting ended with Adrian being escorted back to his quarters under guard. Edmund wouldn't meet Isabella's eyes as he left, his sense of betrayal evident. Isabella remained behind, facing the Queen alone once more. This is what I meant, Alexandra said quietly. About sacrifices. Your brother chose his kingdom over you. Your husband now doubts your family's intentions, and you must choose where your loyalties lie. With the family you were born to, or the one you married into. Isabella felt tears burning her eyes but refused to let them fall. You engineered this. Those letters. Adrian would never be so careless. Someone planted them. Perhaps, Alexandra acknowledged. Or perhaps you're simply learning that trust is a weapon others will use against you. Either way, the lesson remains. In this palace, you stand alone. That night, Isabella managed to visit Adrian before his departure. The guards, sympathetic to the pregnant princess, allowed her a few moments with her brother. They stood in his chambers, servants packing his belongings around them. I'm sorry, Adrian said immediately. I should have been more careful. But Isabella, those letters, I didn't write half of what they claim. Someone altered them or forged additions. I know, Isabella assured him. This is another move in someone's game. But Adrian, I need you to go peacefully. Any resistance will only make things worse. Adrian gripped her hands tightly. Father won't accept this insult quietly. He'll demand satisfaction. Then you must convince him otherwise, Isabella said urgently. I won't have my child born into a war between grandparents. Promise me you'll make him understand. Adrian pulled her into a careful embrace, mindful of her condition. I promise to try. But Isabella, be careful. There are forces at work here beyond simple court intrigue. Someone wants to isolate you completely. After Adrian's departure the next morning, Isabella retreated to the palace's chapel. She needed solitude to think, to plan her next moves in this increasingly dangerous game. The baby moved restlessly within her, as if sensing her distress. She knelt before the altar, not praying but strategizing. Adrian's banishment had achieved what months of Alexandra's coldness hadn't. It had severed her strongest tie to her homeland. Without her brother's support, she was truly alone in Valdoria. Unless, I thought I might find you here. Isabella turned to find Lady Mortimer entering the chapel. The older woman moved slowly but deliberately, taking a seat in the front pew. Come, child. Your knees will protest such treatment in your condition. Isabella rose carefully and sat beside her unexpected visitor. They sat in silence for a moment, candlelight flickering across ancient stone walls. You warned me about threats disguised as allies, Isabella said finally. Did you know what would happen to Adrian? Lady Mortimer sighed deeply. I knew something would happen. The Queen has been too quiet, too accepting of your brother's presence. Alexandra never tolerates potential threats for long. Then why warn me at all? The older woman turned to study Isabella with eyes that held surprising kindness. Because 30 years ago, I watched another young woman destroyed by this court's machinations, Alexandra herself. Before she became what necessity demanded, I failed to help her then. Perhaps I can do better now. Isabella felt hope stir for the first time in days. Will you help me? I will teach you, Lady Mortimer corrected. Help suggests charity. What you need is education and survival. The first lesson is this. The Queen didn't forge those letters out of cruelty. She did it to show you a truth. What truth? That everyone can be made to appear guilty in this palace. Your brother, your husband, even you. Evidence can be manufactured, witnesses bought. Loyalties shifted like pieces on a chessboard. The Queen wanted you to see how easily trust becomes betrayal. Isabella absorbed this harsh lesson. And knowing this helps me how? Lady Mortimer smiled, an expression that transformed her austere face. Because once you understand the game's rules, you can begin to play it yourself. The Queen thinks she's broken you by exiling your brother. Prove her wrong. Use this crisis to build your own power base. Over the following days, Isabella did exactly that. She began with the servants, those invisible observers who knew everything, but were rarely considered important. Her genuine kindness toward them, especially during her pregnancy when many nobles became demanding, had already created goodwill. Now, she cultivated it carefully. She also reached out to lesser nobles who felt overlooked by the Queen's inner circle, not with grand promises but with small considerations, remembering their names, asking after their families, including them in informal gatherings. Slowly, carefully, she built a network of people who owed her personal loyalty rather than institutional obedience. Edmund remained distant, hurt by what he saw as her family's betrayal. But Isabella didn't push. She understood his conflict, torn between his pregnant wife and his suspicious mother. Instead, she focused on being the perfect princess in public, supporting his decisions and never complaining about her isolation. Lord Marquis of Ravenmore continued to hover at court's edges, his role in revealing the conspiracy earning him favor with the Queen. But Isabella noticed how his eyes followed her movements, how he appeared near her gatherings seemingly by chance. She filed this observation away, another piece in the growing puzzle. 2 weeks after Adrian's departure, Isabella experienced sharp pains that sent the palace into panic. The royal physician was summoned immediately, examining her while Queen Alexandra and Edmund waited anxiously outside her chambers. The child comes early, the physician announced gravely. Prepare the birthing chamber. What followed were hours of agony and fear. Isabella had known childbirth would be difficult, but the pain exceeded her expectations. Through it all, she thought of her mother in Rosemore, who should have been here for this moment. She thought of Adrian, exiled for the crime of caring for her welfare. Most of all, she thought of the tiny life fighting to enter a world already full of threats. Push, Your Highness, the midwife urged. The babe is almost here. With effort that felt superhuman, Isabella brought her child into the world. The infant's cry, strong and healthy despite the early arrival, filled the chamber. Tears streamed down Isabella's face as the midwife placed the baby in her arms.